Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. Every human alive is a sinner. Some like to style themselves as above the daily struggle and not in the mud with other humans. But they are unable to pull away from the facts of creation. They too are imperfect, and they too are sinners. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. The Holy Father is infallible in his decisions about the Church, but he is still human and still imperfect. He still sins. So too the Holy One, the Dalai Lama. He is seen as blessed in the eyes of all Buddhists, and he was chosen by God and Buddha to rule their great number. But he too is imperfect, and he too is a sinner. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. The only man born perfect was Jesus. He had no sin attached to his conception, or even his mother's conception. He was perfect and without the stain of original sin. And throughout his life, he had no sin. His cousin, John the Baptist, had his original sin removed by God in his mother's womb. So he was conceived with sin, but that natural sin was removed only through an act of God. And of course, the Blessed Virgin, conceived without sin, the Immaculate Conception, so that she was purest of pure when she came into the world, so to become the handmaiden of God and the mother of his child. None of these three condemned this woman, only one of them being present. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. Why did the Christ precondition the stoning to be done only by those who were without sin? Can you think of a reason in light of the time? The Jews were looking to find a reason, any reason at all, to arrest Jesus, and then they would kill him through some means most foul, while he was in their position. By creating the precondition of being without sin, Jesus knew he would be within the law, because Moses required that those who sat in judgment were pure of that particular sin being judged. But Christ expanded, removing two words from Moses, which was allowed by Jewish law and tradition. He removed that particular. So instead of being free of that particular sin being judged, they had to be pure of all sin being judged, thus eliminating all but himself. And notice the first to leave. Those who were always first to sit in judgment of all persons, the elders. Then following them would be the high priest, because they were next to sit in judgment. Following them would be the Pharisees, because if the elders weren't there and the high priests weren't there, then the Pharisees would be the next ones to sit in judgment. And then the highborn. and then the rich, and so on through the echelons of society, though the poor never sat in judgment of anyone, ever. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone. Only Christ ever sits in loving judgment of any sinner. And so long as she or he confesses, is remorseful, and agrees to try to sin no more, their sins are forgiven them. But we are human. We will sin again. And Christ will again be loving and forgiving, provided that we are remorseful, confess, and agree to try to sin no more. It is written, let it be done. Let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone.